And welcome back to EUC Way of Life. You can see here I'm riding the Sherman S, and unfortunately I did lose all of my footage of the range test. However, I did take note as I was doing the range test of what percent battery I was at and how far I went. So at some point during this overview of the Sherman S, I'm going to release those details of the total range I got on this wheel and how much range I got up to what percent. So I do want to say I have ridden a lot of suspension wheels. I have also ridden suspension wheels like the Master, the Hero, the S18 with air shocks and with coil shocks, and I do much prefer coil shocks. However, with the S22 I had with the upgraded roller sliders, I honestly did not think that any wheel was going to have better suspension than that wheel. And then I got on the patent, and my mind was blown how good it was. The Veteran Sherman here, same thing. I am 220 pounds, and this is the 62-pound coil on this thing, and I have the preload set to about 40%, compression at 0, and the rebound, I think, 6 or 8 clicks, maybe 10. And this wheel is amazing. You ride off a curb, and you don't even know you went off of a curb. I thought that it was underpowered, and I took this wheel and the S22 Pro Gold to the same 25-degree incline, and at a rolling start, say 5-6 miles an hour, the S22 no doubtedly beat the Sherman S. However, at a standstill from the bottom of the hill to the top, no matter how much I leaned on the S22 Gold, it stopped about 3/4 of the way up and just started grunting, and I had to step off of it. I couldn't keep my balance anymore. With the Veteran Sherman S, it walked up that hill right over the other side, no problems. So yes, it is a bit, I would say, laggy, and it feels sluggish. However, it definitely does have the power. It is an amazing wheel. It is very heavy. You know, these wheels just keep getting heavier and heavier. The S19 is a perfect example of that. You have an S18 that's, 50-55 pounds, depending on the version you had, or you have the S19, which is like 80 pounds, and it's its predecessor. So a bit crazy to me. However, I still have one on pre-order because I'm really curious if it's narrower than the S22 and how well it performs for it being a Kingsong 100-volt wheel. So the Sherman here has been an absolute blast. I never wanted to buy a wheel for 4K, and I made numerous comments on posts that my limit was never more than 32 or 3500 for a wheel. I bought my used Prius at 4K, so I didn't see how I could justify buying a wheel for $4,000. However, I have zero regrets on this wheel. eevee's reached out to me and let me know that there is an upgrade kit for this one. It's the batch 4 parts that have to do with the suspension stanchion tubes and the pedals and the trolley handle, and they're gonna send me out the kit for free. I told them, no rush. This wheel has no issues, so I'm not that concerned. So whenever you get around to it, I appreciate it. That's awesome. And I even told him, I was like, if Leaper Kim isn't crediting you guys or giving you reimbursement for shipping to customers, I'll just drive up there and pick up that kit. It's a 4-hour drive from me, but I go up to Vancouver all the time, so it's really not a big issue. But they're going to ship it down to me, which is fantastic. So I will be doing a video of that kit, what the components are, and if I'm going to replace any of them. A lot of people have had problems with the adjustable spiked pedals. I feel like 99% of the time I ride it, I have no problems with the issue or no issues with the spikes on these pedals. However, the adjustments are now completely shot on both pedals. Neither, well, I should say all four don't work on either side. But, nimbleness wise, I could turn on this wheel as easy as I could on my T4. Unlike the S22, if it's kind of flatter profile, it's easier to swing this wheel around than it is that wheel. It's a very tall body, which makes it narrower, which also makes it extremely comfortable. I know people at the beginning complained that where the suspension tube adjustments are, that they kind of beat up your legs. I mean, nothing like an M10-4, but I honestly have yet to experience that. So if you're a comfortable rider and you're not squeezing the wheel all the time with your legs and you're relaxed, I don't think you're going to run into that issue. But there is little pads that you could stick over that, or 3D printed parts you could put over that to kind of make it rounded off, kind of like the calf savers for the S22. The headlight on this thing is absolutely amazing at night. I love it. I do still wish that the tail light was better, but I don't ride around at night that often, and the laser beams are cool, so I'm not giving it up. I like it too much. As far as, getting into the range on this thing, I read a lot of posts. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, like a bunch. Anyone I could find for EX30 range test, Sherman S range test, and Commander Pro range test. It seemed like the Commander Pro was getting about 60-65 miles on a charge at speeds of which are 25 to 30 miles an hour for average speed. And the EX30, I watched a couple of them where they were more slower paced, like my range of 20 to 25 mile per hour for average speed, and they were only getting about 65 to 70, maybe a little over 70. And I kept thinking to myself, the original Sherman was 100 volts, it weighed 88 pounds, it had whatever power it had, and that thing was getting 100 miles. A couple riders got over 100 miles on that wheel. So I don't quite understand the need for long range wheels to have, these extremely high voltages. Everybody's about this voltage craze. And honestly, I love the Sherman here at 100 volts over my S22 at the 126 volts. It's smoother, it's quieter. For what I need it to do, it does everything without hesitation or problem. And I have off-roaded the crap out of this thing. I have dropped it a few times. I went down some black tracks on mountain bike trails with my friend on his A17, and this Sherman did it all. It was quite amazing that it went through it, and it did the drops. I was scared I was going to break the suspension, but it did it, and it goes a top speed of 50 plus miles an hour. It has no issues with its 100 volts. So the more volts you add to get the same watt hours, you're just adding that much more weight. This thing's solid metal. If it had 3,600 watt hours and 134 volts, it would be, a 120, 130 pound wheel instead of a 98 pound wheel or whatever without the pads. So I really wanted to do a range test on this. I took it out to the Olympic Discovery Trail, and I did just that. I stood on this thing, and I rode from Sequim to Port Angeles down the Discovery Trail, all the way back to Sequim to Berlin. I mean, I basically rode this thing around for 6.5 hours, making stops throughout the day just to see where I could get on it. And for any of you guys still watching the video, I'm going to get into those specs right now. And I was comfortably surprised, and I'm definitely going to do another range test. That way I have footage of it, and I didn't have the GPS app at that time. and I did not take shots with EUC World, like screenshots. I just took notes in my phone. So from 100% down to 42%, I got 59.5 miles, which I was like, dang, at 42%, if it's anything like a Kingsong wheel where your last 15% is basically unusable, I was like, that's going to be questionable to get to 70 miles. Once you get below 50%, you start losing range pretty significantly. And once you get below 30 is when you start hitting that concern of where I'm going to make it, And at 43%, which is when I turned the wheel back on from one of my stops, so it regained 1% from sitting there idle for however long, down to 36%, I got another 5.2 miles. From 36% to 30%, I got 3.5 miles. From 30% to 27%, I know it seems like random percents, you guys, but this is kind of like when I just stopped or I was at a stoplight and I checked, the wheel after standing idle for a second and looked at the range on the wheel as well as EUC World and trying to, compare. From the 30 to 27, I got 3.5 again. So from 36 to 36%, I got 3.5. From 30 to 27, 3%, I got 3.5 miles. And from 27% down to 9%, I got another 4 miles. So, not to say that the 9% was where I was, because I sat there and I tried to do a little video clip of me showing the battery bars and how far I went on the range on that wheel. It actually increased from that 9 to 18% in EUC World. I don't have the voltage for you guys, but I would trust that the 18% is fairly accurate. So as far as total miles go, I got 75.7 miles. So just shy of 76 miles, and that was from 100% down to 18%. I did start getting beeps at 10% if I quickly sped up to 20 miles an hour, but casually riding at 20 miles an hour, there was no beeps, there was no tilt backs. So 76 miles. To me, I'm pretty sure that is better than both the EX30 and the Commander Pro did. However, we all ride differently, we all ride in different areas, and we all have different riding speeds. My average speed on this run was about 25 to 27 miles an hour. It is very easy to go very fast on this wheel, and I was having an absolute blast. I did have highs on some straightaways of about 35 to 37 miles an hour. So if I were to have kept this wheel around 20 miles an hour, I probably could have got 80, 90 miles plus before I was completely dead, which to me is absolutely amazing. So again, it is a $4,000 wheel, and I really wanted to try a Commander Pro before I bought this wheel because the suspension is very similar. The performance on the Commander Pro is supposed to be better. Weight is nearly the same. Looks wise, I like the Sherman and the handles much more than the Commander Pro, but I didn't get that chance. So this is the wheel I ended up with, and I have no regrets of this wheel. It is a blast. It is the most comfortable thing I have ever ridden, and it ensues confidence. Like, I would have never thought about going up and down stairs until riding this wheel, and now I'm going up and down stairs with this wheel, the S22, and anything I can, because it is that fun. I love this wheel. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I apologize again for not having the actual range footage, but those are the stats. And as always, have a beautiful day, you beautiful people.